All right, hello. In this video, I want to go through how to upload and store images on Firebase. So how we can use Firebase for doing image hosting, image storage, or media. This will apply to any media in general, but particularly for images. So we've previously talked about the Firebase real-time database, right? That's the system we've already talked about, and that's used for storing JSON-style data, text, numbers, booleans, etc. That actually can cover a lot of the data that we actually need to care about for an application. But sometimes we want to store larger files or media, like images or potentially even video, though we don't have space on a free account for video. In order to do that, we're actually going to need to use a different kind of service, a different set of Firebase, a different service provided by Firebase. In particular, what it means we're going to need to do is we're going to need to use what is called storage. So Firebase storage is what's used for storing large files, images, audio, video, etc. Firebase gives you for free, right, without sort of as for a free account, gives you, I think, 500 megabytes of space for storing these kinds of things, which will cover sufficient number of images for most projects, most sort of low-level projects we're dealing with, because images are small. Videos tend to be bigger, right? Videos might be 50 to 100 to 200 megabytes. You probably can't store very many of those in storage. You'd have to go find other solutions. So this is really, think about mostly for images. Cool. So in order to get started using storage or in order to upload images, again, we'll go to storage in the Firebase web console. We're going to click get started. Once again, it's going to ask us about setting up security rules. This is similar to how the real-time database worked. And once again, we are going to say we want to start in test mode to make sure everything works. It'll then ask us where, like, which of Firebase's like servers, farms, data centers do we want to store this information in. Any option is fine. I tend to pick US West because we're in the West Coast, so like maybe it might be a little bit faster accessing things. It doesn't matter too much. So pick one. I know there's a big thing that says like you can't change it later. Be very, very careful. For your projects, it doesn't matter. Just don't panic. Like for massively optimized systems, it may matter, but if you get to that point, you can always migrate to a different location, a different storage anyway. So we're gonna hit done. That's gonna go ahead and create our default bucket. So that's gonna be the place that we're gonna be able to upload images. And it will, of course, take a minute. Cool. We're then presented with a view that's going to be very similar to what we're used to in the database or in authentication, right? We have our list of all the files that have been uploaded to the storage. You can get to tabs to see rules, you can get to tabs to see usage, etc. You can upload files directly if you want to. You can even create new folders. We're going to do it all through code, so we don't need to worry about this happening right here. Okay, so the code that we're actually going to add, that we're going to make work with our application, is we're going to modify our profile page here. So I've created a page that has a place for the user's user icon, user image can be structured. So this is a new profile page component that basically displays an image and then some form stuff for us to be able to upload pieces. And then I've got event handlers for what happens with these images. So let me show you what this looks like at the moment. And also let me open up and make sure that I've got my stuff up and running. So, all right. So here is the folder, right? Here's my image folder that has like the images that like my user, these are user images that I've worked with before. And it's sort of, they're just in a folder here for us to work with. If we wanted to change our photo, the code that I've already written, put together, is I can click choose an image. And what that will do is that will open up a search form, right? A form for me. It opens up, not even a search form, sorry. It opens up a browser window for me to be, a file explorer window for me to be able to go pick a file I want to pick. So I could, for example, say that I want to use this be eagle. I'm the owl. Well, we'll use the eagle. That's fine. It's the first one. If I hit open, it then says that's the image you've now chosen. It shows me a preview picture. There's some magic that is making this happen. I wanted to walk through that code briefly. This is not necessarily related to file storage, but it's related to user images, and so it's worth sort of understanding. So, when I click this choose image, right, what this is here, this is an input of type file. So a file input is similar to a text input or similar to a checkbox input. It's a input that lets the user select a file for us to use. Now, what you'll notice is that this file input and has a change handler, etc. But what you'll notice about this file input is that it is actually has a class of D none. That's the Bootstrap class that says display none. Do not show this file input. So actually, there's a file input on the page, but we are not seeing it. It's secret. It's hidden. If I get rid of that class, then you can see what the file input looks like. So this is the default styling for a file input. It says choose file, and it then shows you the name of the file that you want to click. And you'll notice that if I click on this thing here, it brings up the thing that I want to select. Now, I think this looks kind of ugly. I don't want to list out the name of the file the user selected. I want to instead show a preview image of it. So what I'm doing is I'm hiding that element. And then I'm using the fact that a label for a particular element has the property of when I click on the label effectively selects, it targets, it highlights, it clicks on the input it's associated with, right? You can use that to be like, I click on the label and it sort of goes to the input, goes to the text box that you're able to type into. So I've created a label. I have styled the label to look like a button, right? It has all the button classes. So this thing here, this choose image element, looks like a button, but its data type is actually just a label. And when I click on that label, it clicks on, right? It goes to the file input, which causes my window to pop up for me to select from. So what I'm doing is this label is basically driving my behavior, which is just sort of a neat little trick that's letting us be able to then go ahead and style a file input the way we want. I got this trick from, I think, CSS Tricks, because I was like, how do I hide that text? And here was a suggestion, which I thought was brilliant. And so I'm sharing it with you because, again, I think it's kind of neat. Okay, so when we hit that button, we hit on change, we select a file, our handle change event happens. So we get our event. That's the event that occurred when I said select a file from a list. We then go through some logic. What I'm doing first is I'm making sure that the user actually picked a file, because it's possible that you open up that dialog and then don't select anything, but hit close, hit cancel. So I'm making sure, and that's still an event, still a changing event. The event changed, just nothing happened. So I'm making sure they selected a file. And then that the thing they selected actually, like the first thing they selected actually is there. They didn't select a file, which then got deleted in the process of selecting it or some other weirdness happened. From there, I'm then accessing the files listing that got selected from the target. Notice it says files plural because you can actually select multiple files through a file input. Getting access to the first thing they selected and saying that thing there is the image file, right? That is the element that they picked. We can console log that image file if we want to sort of see what it looks like. Oh, sorry, I spelled it wrong. Image file. All right, so I go to my console. Keep taking me to my okay, it's gonna keep redirecting me. That's fine. We'll deal with it. When I choose my image, right, it logs out a file type object. So this is a reference to the file. It's not the file itself. It's sort of just a reference to it. It says like this is where you can find that thing on your local computer's memory, right? In my computer's operating system, not on the web, in in Finder, right, where I can find that. And what I'm then doing is I'm taking that file and I'm setting it as the file image, right? I'm basically storing that similar to how we've done a text input, right? And how normally when the user types in some text, we'd save that to our inputted text. This is the user has specified a file, and we're saving that as sort of our inputted file. In fact, I can probably even rename that to make that really clear. We will rename that just to make sure it's really clear for the rest as we're reading through the rest of this code. Right, that's our inputted file. Great. So that's here. This is just controlled form, right? Controlled form. That's exactly what we've done with text. It's now we're doing with a file. The other thing that I'm doing in a separate state variable is I'm saving a URL to where a text string of where to find that file. And what we're doing is we're using a variable, a function from JavaScript. There's a built-in JavaScript DOM level function from the URL library module called create object URL out of a file. Let me show you what this looks like. Right, I'm going to log out what that URL looks like. So let's see if I just pick it now, we'll start logging out. There we go. So it logs out as a blob. It says that it is a file that can be found at localhost 3000, hey, that's a server, slash blah, 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 a whole bunch of stuff. If I click on that, it actually will like it, well, it crashes because it routes me things, but basically is this really, really, really long URL. That file there, that's a URL, right? That's a thing that's like an action. Again, it looks like in every URL we've ever used that, like the same URLs we'd use to say where to find a particular file in our public folder. But that's a file that's stored in the server side of memory at the moment, right? That's stored kind of in the cache. So that's not online, right? It's localhost. It's not something that anyone else can see. If I choose the image a second time, it now, if I choose a different image now, it now has a different location, right? Like it's a different kind of thing. But basically it's doing is saying here's sort of a temporary place where that file is currently being stored in our cache. I'm taking that URL, I'm saving it to our state, right? So that we can basically be able to work with that URL later, right? And again, so this is the image URL. A better question, a better again name for this might be the preview URL in order to keep these two things distinct. Sorry, my preview URL. So my preview URL has sort of where I'm trying to get to. I'm then taking that URL and I'm simply making that the source of the image I want to display. And so that lets me see the thing that I'm interested in. So that's sort of how I get this image preview kind of behavior working. You're welcome to use this kind of image preview stuff in your projects if you want to do that. It doesn't count as a feature, right? Because it's not part of what you're doing, but like, because it's just code from class, but you're welcome to use it if you want to just have the functionality of like showing image previews. All right, so that's all code that's been provided just again to manage like selecting an image and having it available for us to work with. So now we can handle what happens when I hit save to profile, right? Now I want to handle uploading the actual image. I would like to take that image file, right, that input file, and I would like to upload it to Firebase storage. Uploading to Firebase storage is going to look really similar to how we would push things into the real-time database. It's a very similar structure, very similar concept. So, and we can even like, just for reference, we can go to our app, right? This was where we were pushing things into our database, right? So what we did with the real-time database, we got a reference to the database, we got a reference to where it should go in the database, and then we uploaded it. Same process is going to happen for image storage. So we're going to first need to get a reference to the storage. So we're going to import a function called getStorage from Firebase storage. Again, not from Firebase database. This isn't the real-time database. This is from the files we're referencing the storage. So we're going to call getStorage in order to get reference to the storage location, right, where we're uploading these files to. So storage will be getStorage. And again, you can call this, don't try to create a global out of it. You can call it as much as you want. It's just a singleton accessor. It's very, very fast. From there, we need to be able to create a reference for where in storage we want to put that file. Effectively, what we want the path to that file to be. So in order to do that, we are once again going to use the ref function. Now, here's the trick. This is the kind of annoying part. This ref function, the one that comes from storage, is different than this ref function, the one that comes from the database. And actually, you can't use both of them at the same time. It's not the same function. They are actually different functions that work in different ways. So you have to distinguish between the reference function for the real-time database and the reference function for the storage, particularly if you want to try to access both of them on the same page. Now, I don't have any database stuff in here, so I could just say call this ref, and then in this file, ref means storage ref, while in this file, ref means database ref. That seems fragile to me because I might want to do storage stuff in here, database stuff in here later. So I'm going to start aliasing those references just so I can be able to keep track of them. I'll leave ref as meaning the database. It's kind of my generic, like that's my default. But I want to alias this ref as storage ref, just to be very clear that this is a storage reference, not a real-time database reference. That's a Joel thing for keeping track of my code. That's not required for the language or even necessarily recommended by React or Firebase in any way. Okay, so at that point, we can then create our image ref by calling storage ref right? Because we're going to call the function in order to create that reference. The first argument to our storage ref will, of course, be the storage itself, just like we did with the database. And then we're going to put a string, which is going to be where that image is going to need to go. In this case, we can sort of define folders by using file paths, just like normal. So I'm going to, for example, put this image into a user images folder in storage, right? Imagine we're going to create a new folder called user images here. And then I need to specify the name of the file, right? Literally, what file is, where is it going to go? Because this file, this inputted file doesn't have a name. It's just the data, the zeros and ones that represent that image. So we need to say, where do we want to put those zeros and ones? What do we want to call that file? So this, for example, could be myfile.png or mypicture.png, because that's the data type is an image, PNG. I'm going to be a little bit more clever than that. I'm going to actually use the, do we have the current user in here? We do. I'm going to use my current user's user ID as the name of the file. So this file's name is going to be called, it's going to go in the user images folder, and it's going to be called whatever my username is, .png. So parrot.png, person.a.png, bob.png, right? And that just, it'll let me be able to distinguish between those files. And that way I won't just have like a picture of an owl or a generic name somewhere and have to remember which is which. Doesn't matter too much, but it makes things a little bit easier for me to read at least. All right, cool. So there's our reference. From there, right, just like with app, we created, so we got a reference to our database, we create a reference. Oops, sorry. Down here. Got a reference to the structure, the database storage, made a reference to where it goes, and now we need to upload it. So the function we're going to use to upload to Firebase to storage, there's a couple of different ones we can use, but we're going to use one called upload bytes. That's sort of the easiest, most common one of just letting us upload bytes of data into storage. So this will work just kind of like you'd expect. I'm going to call upload bytes. I'm going to say I want to upload it to this image reference, and I want to then upload my inputted image, right? My inputted file. And that will start uploading that data. Cool. With that, we can go to our page. I'm going to refresh, go to the profile. We're going to choose our picture. We're going to choose our majestic eagle. I'm going to hit save to profile. It says it's uploading. Wait a second. If I go to my console here and I refresh my console, notice there's now a user's image folder. Inside my user's image folder, there is now a thing that has the user's ID, right? It doesn't say person B. I didn't say use their display name. I said use their ID, their Firebase ID. So this is their Firebase ID from their authentication. And if we click on it, there's the eagle. It's uploaded. It has a URL, right? I could actually click on it and I could say, take me to this image on the internet. And there's the URL for it, right? The image can be found at firebase-storage.googleapis.com/v0/b// name my project, React Chat apps.0/ there's the folder images / here's the name of the file. Like there's a whole bunch of stuff that goes into it. And here's a bunch of like tokens about accessing things and stuff, right? There's a bunch of like, that's a URL. I could take that URL and I can use it as my user's photo URL, right? To say, here's the URL, here's where to find the picture of that user. It's so that the user's data is not just that go to /image/parrot. It would be go to this URL instead to find the picture of that user. Great. And that's got us uploaded to storage. Now here's the trick though. That's put that information in storage, but now I have to actually get that associated with the user, right? I need to make sure the user, that actually say that image I uploaded is actually the photo URL for this user. So what I need to do is I need to actually say, what is that URL, right? What is this thing that got created by Firebase? I can kind of maybe try to guess at reconstructing it, but it doesn't always work out the way that I want. It depends on the buckets. It depends on a bunch of other pieces. So what I basically need to do here is I need to get the URL of that image I just uploaded, and then I need to assign that URL to the user, right, in the user list. Like those are the two things I need to do still. All right. Well, luckily there is a function for getting the URL of a particular image on storage, and that function is called get download URL. And that gets me the URL of a download thing. So I can say, if I want to get the URL, right, the URL is going to be the result of calling get download URL of the image at that reference. So it says get the URL of that image. Great. Makes sense so far? Good. So here's the trick, though. Uploading bytes takes time. It's slow, right? Potentially, if my image is really big, right? These images are not too large. They're only a couple megabytes because they're tiny little images. But if I'm trying to upload a 5 or 10 megabyte image, right, something really high resolution, that's going to take a lot of time. Upload bytes is an asynchronous function, which means that it's going to start uploading the bytes and then immediately jump to the next line of code. And the next line of code, getting the download URL, won't exist until we finish uploading the file. So in other words, we have to wait for this to be finished before we can run this line of code. So what upload bytes returns is a promise, right? A promise to say when I'm done uploading something, which means that instead of using a promise, I can say then, right? Run a function, and in that function, I can then get my download URL. This is similar to what we did with Ajax, right? When we uploaded we wanted to get data and then encode it, right? Get my data and then encode it into JSON. This is we want to upload some data and then access and ask the Firebase what was the URL of that thing I just finished uploading once it's done uploading. This is going to get a little bit nasty. So what I'm going to do instead of using .thens is I'm going to do this as an async await function. So I'm going to make this function an async function. And then I'm actually going to just say await, wait for my upload bytes to finish. And then I can go ahead and get my URL. Because get download URL requires me to send a request over to Firebase and say, hey, Firebase, what was that URL? And Firebase has to respond to me. That's an Ajax request, right? I'm saying, just like when I said get this data from an API or get this data from somewhere else, I'm saying get me a download URL from somewhere else. So that is an Ajax request, which means that this guy is also an asynchronous function. It also returns not a URL, but a promise. So what I can then do is if I use the await syntax here to say wait for this thing to finish, I can take that result and finally assign it to my URL. So by using async await syntax, I'm going to say upload the bytes, wait for that to be done, then get the download URL, wait for that to be finished, and assign the result to this URL variable. Phew. All right. So that gets me the URL of the image I just uploaded. Awesome. And now, of course, we can console log that out, see what it looks like. Demonstrate that it works. Right. It's always going to test our way going through. So we're going to pick an image. Let's pick how about the zebra? Well, let's pick the owl for now. Upload the owl. We can hit save to profile. It gives me the link then, right? You notice there was a pause here, and then gives me the link to where's that file that exists, and we can now find it in the page. Great. So now I know where to find that file. Now I need to assign that file to the user in the user list. Right, that's the thing we're going to do in this example. But this is also where, hypothetically, you could say, take that image and put that URL into the real-time database, right? Maybe I want to store that image URL as part of a message, right? Part of a post. And you could do that by using Firebase set, just like we were setting things to the real-time database previously. If we want to assign to that user in the user list, to the authenticator, then I need to access that user from the authenticator from the structure there. So in order to do that, we're going to need to use a function from Firebase auth. And the function we're going to use from Firebase auth is called update profile. Update profile will update a user's profile. It updates that user profile, that user information that's in the user list, not inside the real-time database, in the user list instead. So what we could then do is we can call this function, right? We've waited for our download URL to be available, and now we can call update profile. And we're going to pass in 2 arguments. One is going to be which user, like what's the user data, the user object I want to update. And we can do that by just using a Firebase user. So because my current user here is a Firebase user, remember my current user came from the data from the authenticator user base, but this is a Firebase user object. I can actually just use that object to indicate here's the person I want to update. And then we're going to pass in an object containing what properties of that user we want to change. In this case, we want to change our photo URL, and I want my photo URL to become this new URL that I got from my image, right? That I just downloaded. And that's what we want to update. And that's where we're going to go. This is also an asynchronous task, so I can wait for it to be finished, and then I can do other stuff after that. Note that if you wanted to put this data into, like, put this in, you don't want this to be part of the user's profile picture. You don't want it to be like that image. You want it to be maybe just another image the user's uploaded. We would need to put it inside the user database. So we might do something like Firebase set to some reference. Like we might say, for example, create a reference that was, I'm just going to note this out, right? Your reference might be something like might be user data / the user ID / images / loaded for images. And then I might say I want to push to that reference, right? Push into this image or image list for that particular user in my user's data folder. We can keep track of it that way. Cool. But with this, we should be able to update our user profile. So I'm going to refresh my page again. Here's person A. Their profile currently is a null image. I'm going to choose the majestic eagle. I'm going to save this to their profile. It says it's now saved. If I now go to my chat page and I refresh, now all my properties are updated. And now we have that image. That's now the image associated with that user. It's the image that's stored in that user list. Notice that I had to refresh and change it. That's because this state variable, this user object variable, right, this local variable inside of app, this guy, had the old value inside of it. And then now that I've updated that value, I also need, like, that doesn't refire off my auth state change because it doesn't change my authentication state. So I would also need to go through and update this current local user variable in some way. For example, I could pass in a function to do that work. A function that says like goes and modifies the state variable and re-renders everything to be able to see it happen. Okay, but that's how we go ahead and upload images. That's the basic idea. So again, the steps involved look really, really similar to the user database. On the real-time database, we're going to access storage, create a reference for where it goes, upload the bytes. And if you want to then work with the URL from that, you're going to need to also get the download URL. Now you have an actual string, a URL string that you can work with to do whatever you want with. All right. And with that, we have user image uploading. Again, you can use this now for any kind of images that you want to upload, and you can store as much stuff as you want there.